Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Athlete to Executive podcast with sports business, technology, education, and legal professionals. Our conversations will not only discuss the technical aspects relating to the business of sport, but will focus on the people in sport. Through these talks, we aspire to provide valuable information for those interested in the business of sport, hoping we create a positive impact and make a difference, at least in one person's life, no matter who you are. I'm your host, Swati Bojaraj, a sports enthusiast, former international fencer of India, a former corporate lawyer, and currently thoroughly enjoy building Propelathon as the founder and CEO. Today's guest on the Athlete to Executive podcast is Alexandra Gomez Bruinewud. Alexandra has practiced commercial, civil, and sports law for over 2 decades. Since 2013, she has been a part of the FIFPRO's legal team, providing legal assessments to unions and players directly on contracts, supporting labor claims, assisting in collective bargaining agreements, assessing stakeholder negotiations, and representing the players and the unions in various forms. Also, since 2017, she's a FIFA dispute resolution chamber judge. She's the first to hold this responsibility as a woman. She regularly lectures at various masters and other academic programs in international sports law or football law. Thank you for joining us, Alexandra. On behalf of the sports business community for India, I extend our heartfelt gratitude for taking the time to share about your journey and learnings with us.
It is a pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Alexandra. First things first, I understand you are from Uruguay and now you are at FIFPRO in Netherlands. Share us about this journey from Uruguay to Netherlands at FIFPRO. Why football and how did all of it come about? Would I be wrong if I said you're living your dream, especially coming from Uruguay where football is everywhere? Also, did you play football as a kid?
I did play football, but just like with my brother, because football was for boys. And I remember already at a very young age having some trouble at school where in the breaks the boys would play football, and then me and some other girls also wanted to play. And then we would ask them, and they would say, "No, you're a girl, so you shouldn't play." So at that time, I was a very fast runner, and there was a friend of mine that ran really fast as well. So we decided to steal their ball and bring it to the ladies' toilet so that they couldn't play if they didn't allow us to play. And we did that a couple of times, and in the end, we were allowed to play sometimes. Anyway, it was not very, very fruitful. But I've always had a little bit that frustration that I never understood why football was only for boys. I've always been a football fan. I went to the stadium. I'm a Peñarol fan from Uruguay. But I never thought of working in football, to be very honest. I studied law in Uruguay. I thought I would work as a lawyer in Uruguay in the typical fields. And in a certain moment, after I had finished my studies as a lawyer and as a notary public, we decided with my husband to do a master's. Actually, our idea, more than doing a master's, we just wanted to go to live somewhere else for 1 year to have a different experience. So we thought of nice studies that we could do. And we both found a nice master's in the Netherlands, in my case, in international commercial law. So still not sports. And while I was doing that master's, we had one of the elective subjects was sports law. And I had already had the chance to have sports law at university. It was also an elective subject. And I remember that I had been really, really tempted in Uruguay because I found it so interesting. But then I thought, like, no, Alexandra, focus. Like, don't do something that is completely, not worth it. It will not help you for anything. You will not work on this. So, focus a bit. So I didn't choose it. But then again, in the master's, it comes again. And I'm like, this is a sign. So I thought, okay, this time I will take sports law just to see how it is. And I found it really interesting. And what was in my view, the nicest part of the course was that they would have guest lecturers that were professionals that were already working in the industry, like I am now, that would tell us about their experience and what they did, and the connection, of course, with law, etc. And one of these guest lecturers that came to give us a lecture came from FIFPRO. So I had never heard of FIFPRO before. I didn't know what it was. And even after the lecture, I was still not fully understanding. I just thought it was really interesting what they did, because they were protecting the rights of players, and we heard a lot of information about the professional football players. In my case, it didn't surprise me that much that not all the football players were wealthy and rich and had perfect lives, because I come from Uruguay, and in Uruguay, we do have some superstars, but the vast majority of the professional football players are just normal persons with a job that allows them to pay for the bills, but not much more than that. And that in the first division. In the second division, they struggle. And I knew that. I don't know if I knew that because football is so popular in my country that we all know everything about it, because it's small, because I've always been interested in all these aspects, a bit more social or whatever. I don't know, but I already knew. So we engaged in a very interesting discussion on where the players came from, what we expected from players. Back then, it was the incident between Suarez and Evra, where he said something really nasty to Evra. But it was interesting to discuss the context in which he had said that, and what his previous understandings were, what he meant, what his culture allowed, etc., without justifying it, but just understanding the different layers. And we talked about education, and we talked about how players move from one country to another without any preparation.
Yeah.
And it's always difficult when you move to a different country with a different culture. But if you move without any preparation at all, without having studied and understood maybe, a little bit more of the world, maybe you have never traveled in your life, and this happens really frequently, and the first time you get into a plane is the time when you're going to go to a different country, probably in the case of Uruguayans to a different continent, because you will travel to Europe. You will go to a country in which they don't speak your language, maybe, that have really other costumes. So it is really interesting, and we really engaged into all that discussion. And the professor was very impressed with what I had to say and the experience, etc. And that was when he told me, like, listen, we're looking for a legal counsel in FIFPRO. I'm not offering you a position, but I see like that you really could fit in. So, if you want to take part of the procedure, which is external. So he said, like, it's not that I will decide from the beginning. We have an agency, but, and I was in complete shock, because the whole plan that we had made with my husband was to go only for 1 year to the Netherlands and then go back. We still had everything back home. So when I got back, in my mind, it was like, okay, this is not going to happen. But when I told my husband, he was actually very excited as well. And he was like, oh, but this is so
Wow.
cool. Let's see what it is. So we said, like, oh, let's Google what FIFPRO is, like, to understand a bit more. So I remember going in their website and trying to see, and then getting excited a little bit more and more. And in the end, I applied, and after a very long process, I got selected, and we stayed in the Netherlands. So it was a life-changing event, let's say.
Wow, that's amazing. A simple experience-based venture to do a master's led you to FIFPRO. And I think, does it feel like sometimes it's all interconnected, where you used to, like, steal the ball and run away to play, to literally now fighting for the rights of these players, many players like this, no matter where they are, right? So I know that's what FIFPRO does. And I have been your student, and I've been like, I know what FIFPRO does. And it was very nice to have been taught by you and to learn all of that. So, like for our audience who probably don't know what FIFPRO is, would you like to share a little about the organization? And why do you think it's very important to have an organization which fights for players' rights?
Yeah, sure, of course. And as I said, I didn't know what FIFPRO was also before I did my master's, so no judgment there.
Yeah.
So FIFPRO is the international organization, the international union that protects the labor rights of professional football players, both male and female, right? So FIFPRO is an organization that was created a long time ago in 1965. But until the Bosman case, that was a very important case in football that changed the system, the transfer system after his case, FIFPRO did not have a lot of strength. And as of that moment, we started having more and more strength. And today we are one of the football stakeholders. We sit together with FIFA and with the European Clubs Association, with the World League Forum, to negotiate on some of the regulations that FIFA has. We still don't have the power and the strength that we would like to have, but we are internationally recognized and respected, and we have pushed for and achieved a lot of improvements in the rights and the protections of professional football players. One example, but there are basically most of the things that improve the quality of the labor conditions of the football players were promoted by us. But just as an example, the maternity regulations that were implemented in the FIFA RSTP, that was our project. We presented it to FIFA. We pushed for it. It's not exactly what is approved now, what we had in our project. Our project was a little bit broader, but if we hadn't done that, we know that female football players would not have maternity protections. So it's a very nice job. I always say it, because we make a difference and we see it. And that is at macro level. And then maybe at micro level, we help professional players in their daily job, because unfortunately, the football industry is quite an evil one, and about half of the players around the world do not get their salaries on due time, and that means that they struggle a lot, and sometimes this leads to terminations of the contracts, and the players need to claim for their salaries and claim for their compensations, etc. So we also provide legal assistance in this, as FIFPRO sometimes directly, but also through our unions, because what FIFPRO is like a conglomerate of professional players associations all around the world. So all these unions together make FIFPRO. We are like an umbrella organization, a little bit similar to how the structure of FIFA and the federations work, where all the federations together conform FIFA. Well, all these unions together conform FIFPRO. Maybe a thing that is important to highlight is that if there's no union or no players association in a specific country, for whatever reason, we will still help the players in that country, because it's not that they chose not to be a member of the union, it's that they can't because there's no union. So where our job is quite broad.
Yes. So, as you were mentioning, there are so many things I want to ask you right now, but I'll kind of rely on your last statement. You said if there is no union, despite that you go ahead and help players from a specific jurisdiction or a specific country, right? So how do these players unions come into being? Like, a lot of countries, at least in the parts of the world where football is not a very established game, players themselves don't know what their basic rights are in terms of even negotiating basic pay with their clubs, or maybe the clubs are not even in a position to pay, or academies eventually working with clubs, they may not really be in compliance with a lot of RSTP and other FIFA regulations, right? At a very basic level, even at governance level. So how difficult has it been really educating these players about their rights, or how easy has it been or difficult has it been to get them to form a union at all? And it seems very challenging. It's like literally going against the system. Probably that's how a lot of people or players would look at it, right?
Yeah, well, actually, we don't. We don't. Well, it's difficult to say. It's not that we don't promote the creation of unions, because of course we do, but we
Yeah.
don't go to a country and say like, "Oh, you should start a union
Mm.
here," because we don't have the capacity. We're not that big. So how we work is a group of players is interested, they want to start a union, they reach out to us and we help them. But it's not like we go to a country and we say like, okay, players, wake up, you need to create a union, you should do it. Normally it's the other way around. And why does it happen? And actually it's interesting, it's quite sad if you think of it, but it's interesting to see when you speak with all the presidents, secretary generals of the different unions, um, the vast majority of them, if not all of them, have suffered from the system. And that is why they decided to stick together and to create a union, or maybe they were not the ones creating it, but like um, to become presidents, etc. Because when you don't suffer from the system, you don't have a problem with the system, right? So most of them are cases of non-payment, severe non-payment, clubs that went bust, they disappeared and they could never collect their credits. Others are they were injured and they were abandoned by their club, and no one paid for their medical costs. These things that we see all the time, unfortunately, normally are characteristics of the persons that initiate the movement of
Yeah.
the union. Then it's a very difficult job to go club by club, but this is the unions. It's not FIFPRO. That they go club by club, speaking to the players, explaining the problematics, explaining why it is important to be part of a union. Something important to highlight is that, of course, when you have one problem like the one that I was referring to of non-payment, etc., you will have a very linear response and help, and you will see like the benefit of being in the union. But there are other things that lay in the surface which make the relevance of a union important for all players, not only those players that might be suffering from non-payment, etc. So even if you're a really big player, if you're a Messi, you will probably get paid.
Yeah.
And if you're not paid for 1 month, you will not struggle because you have already a lot of money. Although, of course, you always have the right to get paid every time. But probably for Messi, that will not be a problem. But Messi will indeed suffer from the international match calendar, for example.
Mm.
Those are negotiations that take place through FIFPRO. And the way to be part of FIFPRO is to be part of the union,
Mhm.
right? So even if it's not out of solidarity, the big players also benefit massively when we talk about unionism. So
Mhm.
international match calendar is one example. Match fixing is another example. You don't want to be in the middle of a fixing scandal or whatever, right? You want the competition where you work to be clean. We support in this. We provide a tool to report anonymously, um, you know, many things, all the revision of the system of concussion, for example, and concussion can happen to the best player or the worst player. It doesn't distinguish between the quality of the players or the amount of money that they earn. That is a policy that we really developed and pushed for in order to have better protection. International breaks, well, it's connected to the match calendar, so the resting time that the player will have between one game and the other, or the holidays that they will have, all those minimums are things that we are there to push for. So that is why unions and FIFPRO are relevant to all players from every level.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing this, Alexandra. And also moving back to the earlier, question when we were speaking about the role of FIFPRO. I know you spoke about the maternity regulations and RSTP, and I was researching. And as I was researching, I also know you personally played a very pivotal role in bringing about this transformation. You were sitting on the table negotiating on behalf of FIFPRO for the organization and all of this, right? Like which is really incredible. I know today female football players have the right to maternity leave and also to get paid during maternity leave. So during one of the rooms that I was in with several colleagues, both professionals of all genders, like male, female, and all other genders as well, right? We were discussing about the latest legal developments in football industry. This was a few years ago, and one of the aspects that we spoke about was about the maternity regulations for female players. Without hesitation, this one specific member who was on a panel, without hesitation, he conveyed how maternity leave for professional female football players will only hold back the development of women's football, which I do not agree with. And a lot of my other colleagues also did not. But this was a statement made by one of the leading football lawyers, as I was saying. I would not be surprised if you heard this before or many other similar comments from other industry peers. Uh, Even today, sports and football is predominantly male-led profession. When I say male-led profession, I mean outside of the field of play, apart outside of the teams. Predominantly, it's still a lot of organizations are run by male leaders or run by a majority of the professionals are male professionals, right? Do you have similar experiences that you'd like to share during the whole negotiation process about these maternity regulations? And how difficult was it for you to actually sit at the table and negotiate for rights during the whole of this process? And is there anything that stands out? And what kept you going? When I say you, not you personally in the ecosystem, and two, you representing FIFPRO as an organization. Just wanted to ask you this.
Yeah, well, many points on this.
Yeah.
One is that unfortunately, sometimes people, I respect all opinions, but sometimes people give an opinion without having the knowledge, and that is very dangerous. So when we decided to develop the maternity regulations, on top of being a very basic rights that every worker should have, so, to start with, I think that there we can close the discussion because despite being a football player, above everything, you're first a human being. And as a human being, you have the right to maternity if you're, right, a female. But that discussion aside, before we developed these regulations, what we did was a research in FIFPRO in 2017, in which we asked a lot of questions regarding women's football, right? Two players. So it's not like these tautologies, like these people that think that they know about everything. We asked to the players, so actually those that are kicking the ball. And one of the questions that we asked, because we had noted that the players were leaving, and this was statistical, the game too early. We have also noted, and this is also statistical and it's studied, that the best development of a player, the peak of the player, the moment that they play the best, is above 25 years old, right? So 25, 26, 27 years old. That is the peak. That is like where they are really at their top. And the women professional players were leaving the game before reaching this peak. And this is really problematic from a development point of view, because if the players do not stay until they get to that point when they are at their maximum, the spectators do not see that. The game does not develop in the same way, and it affects the product, right? If it affects the product, you will have less sponsors. If you have less sponsors, they will not feed in the system, the conditions, then they never improve because they don't get the same standards. So it's a whole cycle. So this was something that we really thought, whoa, this is something we need to attack, because the players need to be able to stay in the game at least until they reach their peak. And why are they leaving before? Like, are they bored about football? Is it that? Well, it was not that they were bored about football. They loved football. There were two reasons why they were leaving the game too early. One, very obvious, economical reasons. Professional women players, this was 2017. It's still the case, but it was worse then.
Yeah.
Very few get money, and the ones that get money, they get really few money. So in the vast majority of cases, even if they are fully professional, they have a side job. So it's really difficult to keep up with that. You can do it, you do it for a while, you love football, you keep on doing it until you're done, right? So that was one of the reasons. And the other reason that they gave was that they wanted to start a family. So they saw an incompatibility between being a mother and playing football. So we decided to try to tackle both, because both are very important and they are really sad. It's really sad that a person that has trained for really long and has been able to reach the game and to become professional, that they have to leave because of this. And specifically on the maternity one, we thought, okay, we need to protect this. It's crazy. Any other worker in a developed country will have the protection on maternity. This should be protected everywhere. They have to have a right of a leave that is paid, because otherwise, yeah, you have the right, but how do you make ends meet? So it has to be paid. And we need to have some protections on the player, that when she has her child and comes back, that she can be registered again, because we have a transfer system that is very restrictive, and it would have been really problematic that when the player is back, then the club says like, oh no, yeah, good luck until the following registration period. That was the reason why we came with this idea. So everything was thought for. There was a clear idea on it. That's one thing. The other thing is that hopefully we will have a lot of female players that feel safe enough, confident enough to use the regulations and to have children if they want to. But the reality indicates that the majority of the players will still not have children while they are playing, because they choose to, and they can choose whatever they want because they are fully free, and that's perfectly fine with us. What we wanted to make sure is that for those that really wanted to have children during their career, that they had the right to do so and that they were protected. So for all the fatalists that say like, oh, this is the end of women's football, you will not see, and I can put my house on it, 11 players in a team pregnant.
Yeah.
That will not happen, right? It will not happen. So yeah, that was a little bit like the background. And regarding the negotiations, I have to say that compared to the normal negotiations that are always really difficult with FIFA and the stakeholders, because of the different points of views and interests that are being protected, the maternity was quite, of course, we had like, there were tensions. We didn't get everything across. We wanted many more protections and some things done a bit different. So it was not a piece of cake. I'm not saying that. But the principle of having a maternity leave was supported by all stakeholders. And that was really good. We had some meetings that also led to a lot of discussion in some points. And we're not exactly all on the same page. We now start again, actually, just these last months. We have been discussing the review of these maternity regulations, what should be changed, what should be added, etc. And there are some things that for us are really frustrating, because one of the things that we want to change, it was actually presented in our first draft as well, is that the employment contract of a professional women player has to be extended if she gets pregnant, and her contract would end during her pregnancy or during her maternity leave. Obviously, it should be extended, because otherwise you are erasing with your elbow what you're writing with your hand.
Yeah.
You are saying, yes, we are so progressive, we give you a maternity leave, but when you want to exercise those rights,
Yeah.
and your contract comes to an end, goodbye, my darling, you don't have any rights.
Yes.
And this is particularly important because in women's football, the average length of a contract is 1 year only. So if you sign a contract for only 1 year, you need to sign the contract, run very fast to get pregnant, be lucky enough to become pregnant immediately in order to be able to benefit from part of the benefits of the regulations. So this is a point that is very tricky and sticky, because this is something that the clubs do not want. But well, we will see how much we can push this forward. That was one point, and the other point that is really important for FIFPRO is that men are also human beings. Men are also fathers. And yes, they are players and we love watching them, but if they have a child, that is more important. So men should also have the right to a paternity leave, which is obvious if you think, if you already allow the maternity leave, why would you not allow the paternity leave? I understand that, of course, the woman is the one carrying the baby, but in the new incorporations that are coming now with FIFA that we're negotiating, we are adding what is called a family leave.
Yes.
But the family leave is only for female family.
Oh.
So if you have a partner from your same sex, then you can have a family leave. But if you are a man, you don't.
Okay.
Which is quite
challenging,
ridiculous,
yeah.
if you ask me. It's great that we have added this. I'm really happy with the family leave. I just think that obviously the family leave applies to family, if your partner is a woman or if your partner is a man.
Yeah.
So that those things are still challenging, and we have heated discussions about it. But well, I think that one of the things that helped us a lot is that we got really educated on the subject. We got a lot of inspiration from the International Labour Organization on which were the basic standards, so that it was also difficult for any other stakeholder to say like, oh, I don't agree with that. Oh, you don't agree with the ILO or with FIFPRO, you know? Yes. So I think that helped a lot. But yeah, it's really persevering, not giving up, even if sometimes the results of the negotiations can be very frustrating, especially when you have put a lot of effort and a lot of passion in a draft or in a proposal. But knowing that even when you achieve something small, it's better than nothing. So, like, you always have to keep on remembering that if you had not done anything, nothing would have been improved. Well, now something was improved, not everything that you wanted, but at least things are moving. But I'm not saying it's easy.
Thank you for sharing this, Alexandra, and congratulations. So you started this response saying players are workers and they have basic human rights, right? Irrespective of what gender you are from. And I was recently watching some videos and, just generally on different forms of social media. And a lot of players, I think this was actually published by FIFPRO, a lot of players, male players, come and speak about how workplace, at the end of the day, the field in which they play, the stadium where they play is workplace for them, right? Is workplace for them. They feel very unsafe at workplace, very, very, very unsafe at workplace when they're taking when they're at the corner or even the goalkeeper. So these are some of the things that male players have also expressed. And also, I know as we were speaking, there were a lot of questions I wanted to ask. And also, as we were speaking, I was reading, researching, and I came across an interview where you actually said there came a point where that is the players, had lost their love for what they did for football, which was what they loved the most. This was your response to the questions pertaining to sexual harassment of women players, right? So there are so many issues that male and female players definitely go through, which if we had more time, definitely I would have loved to get into details. But I'd like to connect all of this and ask you one last question. What I want to ask is, I know you were recently at the Sport Accord conference, and you were one of the panelists on the discussion about internal and external athlete representation. During the discussion, I understand you highlighted the importance of independent representation through players' unions, where consultation is not where mere consultation is not enough, but also negotiation is needed. And you, as a lawyer for FIFPRO, and FIFPRO as an organization, does this. Can you explain little bit more on why this negotiation is so important? One, and secondly, in the interest of time, what is your message for all of those little boys and girls who are probably stealing football, like, not going to classes and playing sports, or even future sports law aspirants? What would your advice to them be? And what do you think they should do?
Well, regarding the first question, the athlete representation being external and independent, in our view, is absolutely fundamental, because when you just select an athlete, not the union, but the federation or
Yeah.
whatever body it is, to represent their peers, they don't have a mandate to represent that peer. And even if there are kind of informal elections without a body, and this person is elected, this person is still under subordination, because it's a worker that is sitting in a place with their boss, direct or indirect, but in the end, it's their boss, or it's from the employer side. And they need to, decide on very tricky points, and sometimes the discussions are very difficult to have, right?
Yes.
So it's putting a lot on an individual. So we're not saying that the voice of the athletes are not important. It's completely the other way around. We love that athletes can provide their voice, and that they also take part of these bodies. But the role of the union can never be excluded, because the union is independent, is not under subordination of any of these bodies, so can really analyze the problem, the issue, in an independent manner, without fearing consequences. Or if there are consequences, they will be on the union as an organization, and not on the athlete, on their employment rights, right? So that is the reason why it's so important to represent through a union. Another reason is that the union has the overview of the whole situation. You might have a new rule that benefits a certain category type of athlete, player in our case. But if you look at the mass, it can be damaging for the mass. So you need to balance that. You need to consider that, right? So I think it's really wrong what sometimes federations do, when they pretend to be open and they pretend to be progressive, and they select athletes that they think are good enough, sometimes with good intentions, people that they think that will represent their peers, and sometimes with ill intentions, putting people in place there that know that will not have a lot of opinion or influence in what they're going to say. But even if it's with good faith, they need to educate themselves on what they are doing, and what they are doing is wrong, because they are putting a person in the wrong space, which will probably damage that person and the people that they are in theory representing. and it's also disrespectful towards the unions that are there to actually represent the players, because the players chose the union to do that.
Yes.
And the last thing, yeah, about the message, that's a tricky one. So so there are different messages. So for those little boys and girls that are kicking the ball and skipping school, I will tell them not to skip school, and I would tell them that follow your dreams, and it's amazing that you love football, but it's so important to study. And it's not only important in case you get injured and you need to switch careers, which you can never know whether it will happen or not. And it can happen when you're 30, it can happen when you're 20, it can happen when you're 15. There are some injuries that unfortunately lead to impossibility to continue with your professional career. So it's much better if you have already been studying and you don't need to start from scratch once this happened. That is one thing. But another thing is, and this is already something that has been researched, you will become a better player if you're educated. It's good for your brain. You will manage tensions and anxiety in a much better way, because you're not only thinking of football, you have other things in your mind. So it will help you rest better and not stress too much, for example, before a match. So all this has been researched, so it's really interesting to see. And you have really good examples of very big athletes that have studied during their career. They didn't wait until the end of their career to start, and they give really good messages, like Giorgio Chiellini, for example. The other thing is that after players retire, it is normally a very, very difficult time, because what they have done for a very long period of time is over, and they sometimes have not developed an identity separated from the football player. Yes. And this leads to crisis and mental health problems, etc. When you have also studied and you have also prepared for something else, this is much smaller, this impact, because you know that you're not only a football player, you're also a psychologist, you're also a coach, you're also a teacher, you're also whatever you like, right? So the education part is extremely important. And for the ones that want to become sports lawyers, I would tell them to also always follow your dreams, to give it a try, especially for the women, because we tend to be a little bit less daring, to dare. And if you're offered to speak in a panel and you're like, oh my God, I'm not prepared enough, etc., you say, yes, I will. You go back home, you study the hell out of everything you find, you prepare yourself really well, and you go there and you do it. And if you don't do it perfect, next time you will do it better. But this is what men have been doing forever. The men that you see sitting in panels sometimes are excellent, and sometimes they are definitely not, but they just go like, yes, I take the opportunity. Well, take the opportunities, not only to sit in a panel, but to start a job or to start whatever you want. Believe in yourselves.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. I mean, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. I always walk out learning more, and I'm certain, like, the community also learns a lot from this. I'm definitely very happy, and I feel very inspired. I don't think there could be a better end, the way you push people and you said, just go do it. Just jump on that opportunity. Thank you so very much. It really has been a pleasure. I sincerely appreciate you taking out the time and doing this for us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and good luck.
Thank you, Alexandra.